Hello everyone, Microsoft Flight Simulator 40th anniversary is coming in November and it brings helicopters. We're going to talk to Jorg Neumann, head of Microsoft Flight Simulator, about this and see what else is coming for the rotor heads out there.
You're cleared to hover taxi.
Jorg, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for talking to me about the 40th anniversary of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's it's mind-blowing, right?
Mind-blowing.
It's just absolutely fantastic. Before we dive into you know what, which is of course helicopters, and I know you are really excited to talk about them. I just wanted to start with that. It's 40 years of Microsoft Flight Simulator. What does it mean to you guys? What's the general feeling inside Microsoft and the Zobo?
I think the general feeling is we're really proud of being here. I mean, 40 years is not an accident. It means something's going right. That means there's two things. I think that means there's an audience that knows what it wants, is appreciative of when they see good stuff, tell you when they don't see good stuff. And then as a development team, I think the way, so specifically over the last year and a half, maybe, the way we've been embraced by the community now, I think has been really great. Like, it's no longer who are these guys, are they real or not real, da 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 da. It's not actually not that. It's more, hey, can you go faster? but I think everybody understands a little bit that the intent is pure and that we are really in the hobby for the long term. And I think that's great. And when we talk about it internally, I always say, well, it's 40 years of the franchise, it's 120 years of aviation, which means for aviation is one of the big achievements of humankind, if you really, at some point, I think, at least technologically speaking. And we've been there for a third of the time. that is interesting. Like, wow, okay. And another thing that's just fascinating is to what degree we are embedded with the real world aviation, much more so than is probably publicly known. But I'm spending a lot of time. I mean, Sebastian, for example, today, you will be interested in that. He's at Gimbal in southern France with the test pilots, checking out the helicopters, right? And the fact that the manufacturers are so interested that we get it right is actually is a huge component why we can get it right, because they clearly know, right? And I mean, later today, I'm talking to the CEO of a exciting plane, because aviation is evolving, right? It's new. There's completely new stuff happening, which is exciting. And people want it to be in flight sim. It's now a thing, like that we get called by saying, hey, I'm making this plane, I just sold N1,000 to blah, 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 and I want it to be in flight sim. What do I need to do? And that tells you something. It tells us that our connection to the simmer community is solid, and that the connection with the aviation industry is really deepening. And I think that's a good fertile ground for the long term.
It is. And I would like to ask you a lot more about this particular subject because it interests me a lot, of course. Companies finally looking at some Microsoft Flight Simulator or any other simulator and finding interesting enough for them to actually look at them as a product that can help them in any way. But that's completely off topic for my conversation today. That's a conversation I would like to have with you guys further down the road, perhaps with some other media outlets. Sure. But let's focus on what brought me here, which is, of course, helicopters. And I would like to do a recap with you, Jorg, because back in 2019 we met at Seattle. For the
global preview event.
The global preview event, exactly. It was amazing. It was very exciting. It was absolutely fantastic. I was completely mind blown. And I told you this back then, and I also did this, I think, a couple times after that first meeting that we had. I was very skeptical about what Microsoft was doing. I was very honest with you from day one.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing, because I left the US completely surrendered. And I was just mind blown by all the work that you and the Zobo had done. So that was really fantastic. And one of the things that I always told people was that I was very impressed not only by the product, but also by the fact that I was being approached by you and the Zobo because you were concerned by the fact that you did not have helicopters back then. Microsoft Flight Simulator did not came out with helicopters. And you didn't have to wait for me to come to you and ask you about it. You guys came to me and you told me, look, we know helicopters are not here, but we want them to be. we want to, and this is your words and Sebastian's word as well, we want to get them right. And
that's right.
If I wasn't impressed before with the amazing presentation that you guys had, I was impressed by the fact that you came to me and you told me that, and that I generally felt that the whole team was very engaged in the sim, and they were not just saying this because, you know, they were trying to silence me, because they weren't even trying to silence me. I didn't say anything to start with, right? And that was the overall feeling. And fast forward a few months later, we have been talking on the background. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people do. Some guys really criticize me for not being on your neck more. And trust me, guys, Jorg doesn't want me on his neck any more than I am already. Right. So, but
I can confirm there's quite a few emails from Sergio in my inbox, so don't worry about his engagement level.
Exactly. And we have been talking a lot. And ever since I heard that helicopters were coming on the fall, one of the things you told me, and I don't think I'm breaking any NDAs by saying this, because you told me that you were that serious about this date of release and you could not miss the release date. And we are having helicopters in November, right, for the 40th anniversary. So this is where we are. And we have seen the amazing work that Sebastian has been doing. The images, yes, it's just mind-blowing. The images and the footage that you have released that I've been echoing on HeliSimmer.com are just fantastic. They look really well, and they seem to be mirroring everything that we thought was lacking in Sims. So I'm very excited about it. And now you have shown two helicopters, the Bell 407 and the Gimbal Cabra G2. I think I may have something to do with that Cabra G2 being in the Sim.
You do, actually. That was a Sergio pick. And the reason why it resonated so much, like we tried to license a lot of things, right? But it resonated because we have no helicopter pilots on the team. Mm-hmm. At all. Like, we have lots of people that have like a private pilot's license, all that, but helicopters wasn't a thing. So we knew we needed help from people who are much more well versed in the subject matter. Sebastian is brilliant. I believe he's brilliant, and he understands all the fundamentals and the physics behind it. But it's a different thing when you actually fly a machine than the paper design of it or the coding design of it. So the fact that you said that's a cool new helicopter, or a pretty new helicopter, but what actually was important was that they're in southern France. That was important because Seb, as I said, Seb and the other main dev working on flight model are at Gimbal today, talking to the test pilots today, and that will get us much further than anything else. Like, I think at some point clearly we need to flight it, so we'll get feedback from Simmers, and there's some other third parties that are graciously offering help. I think Jim probably wouldn't mind telling you that, like, Milvis said, hey, look, we know a lot about helicopters. If you want to preview code with us, we're more than happy to help. It's like, okay, awesome. You know, they're really good in what they do. And I think that was the key for the gimbal. And for the other one, you might not even know this. You probably do. You know things. The reason why it's a Bell, is because we had a license, so there's that. But also because Nemeth Design, which you suggested to me as a good partner, was actually pretty far along. And I'm basically like, hey, because if you have to model everything from scratch and you have a team that's never done a machine, and in comes a new flight model, it's just a lot. So given that they know a lot already about the Bell, and the new flight model is now ready for them, that is what's going to get us there. And that I think those are the two. You know, we're obviously talking about others down the road, right? You know, oh yeah, there will be quite a few helicopters in years to come that are currently being planned, but these are good two entry level helicopters. I think do what you were telling me we should be doing. You know, get sort of a training helicopter ready, and then sort of a more or less mid-sized one without going overly complex on the Bell. That we're doing is not like overly complex on the avionics, which is a good thing, because that's another. I mean, we have working title working on avionics, and Sobo devs are now working on helicopter avionics, but it's different. So you need to actually do quite a bit of work to get that right. And we'll do more work in 23 on that.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to the possible next helicopters. And yeah, I remember our conversations, and that I would probably start with simpler helicopters and go from there, because it's just logic, right? It's logic to start with something that is simple. I'm not going to ask you who else you are talking to, or who you are talking with, because I know at least a couple of developers that have pinged me after some of our previous conversations and the list that I gave you for developers. But from what I know, you are reaching out to other developers as well. So it's not just about Nemeth Designs, and not just about Milviz, and not just about your internal development team. There are other teams as well involved in this.
I would say in general, like, I think this maybe I jump in here. The 40th anniversary edition, which I don't know if you're going to ask me anything about it, but one of the things that I think people should take note is how many of those planes are not made by us. And that is a shift. That started, and I oftentimes wondered why Microsoft teams in the past hadn't done that. Like they try to do everything internal, which ultimately just limits you, right? You can't know every plane, it's impossible. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of knowledgeable people out there that have worked on specific aircraft rotorcraft aircraft for a long time. And we did that with Hans Hartmann and Alexander Metzger with the Porter in the Game of the Year edition. And then the 40th anniversary edition, I would say the vast majority of the planes are not made by Asobo. They're made by partners who are experts. And we're going to get really good planes, much deeper than we could have otherwise gotten. And I think that is to the benefit. So for your helicopter comment just now, I would just say, yeah, I've talked to quite a few companies. I think the door is open. So if anybody listens to this, give me a call, let's chat. Ultimately, what we want is to people experience the breadth of flying, the breadth of aviation inside the base sim, Payware is great. Payware is very important to drive this entire industry forward. But you also want people just to get a taste of it, sort of like the starter kit, right? And the starter kit needs to be good. So
exactly.
Give me a call.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, if you don't have Jorg's email address or contact, you can, just reach out to me, Serge at HeliSimmer.com, and I'll get you in touch. I was actually going to do a follow-up question, and you just answered it. I see more and more Microsoft and Zobo, or at least Microsoft as the parent company or the publisher, contacting these companies and working more with external companies and doing more of these aircraft, which just seems logic to me as well. It makes sense. Now, I wanted to ask you about something else, Jorg, because some time ago, when we talked about, I think you were talking, it was one of the dev updates, and through some contacts that we have made as well, you have talked about a possibility, and I think you remember this because I asked you about it on an email we exchanged as well. You talked about the possibility of having a DLC with 4 to 8 helicopters, which would be a paid DLC. And at the time, you weren't very sure about if we were going to have any default helicopters in the sim, so free helicopters. You always said that native helicopter support was going to be free whenever it was included in the sim, but you were not sure about any free helicopters that would be being added to the sim back then. Is it safe to say that both the Bell 407 and the Cabri G2 are going to be 2 default helicopters that are going to be available for free in the 40th anniversary edition?
Whatever is in that video is clearly free. This is not all we're doing. There's some other stuff that the mental model I have is like, I always think about Forrest Gump and his box of chocolate, right? So you sort of look forward to like, ooh, what's in the day? Like in Germany, we have this thing called Advents calendar where you open up a little door in December every day. I think we're going to have more to say. There's going to be other things that are in this 40th anniversary edition that you can't pack it into a 90-second trailer. It's not possible, right? So there's going to be some other stuff. But yeah, those 2 are obviously free. And then beyond that, so you're exactly right. I was thinking like, the community wants helicopters. How are we going to do this? My first thought was maybe we'll make a really generous sort of, palette of a cross section of helicopters, all the way to like a transport helicopter and those types of things. And then as the 40th sort of formed more and more in my head that we should just celebrate the franchise and give it away for free. The helicopters needed to be part of it. Like we are going to work on other helicopters. I think people think sometimes maybe that everything is pre-planned. I tell you the quick story. The Spirit of St. Louis was not supposed to be part of the 40th anniversary edition. It was supposed to be the plane that came out at E3 a few days ago with World Update 10 America, like the United States. That was supposed to be Spirit of St. Louis. Once you have a 40th anniversary thing, well, you should put it into that because it makes a lot more sense. The same is true for the Milvis Beaver, that at some point or another we thought about this as a paywear plane, but then it made more sense here. And I think of that, ultimately you need to go pursue an aircraft, really understand it, go deep in it, because that's what simmers really want. And then how you release it is kind of a secondary thing, right? At least you have pieces to move around so you can be flexible, and ultimately we try to delight people, right? That's ultimately what we want to do. And so I think we are on a good path. Helicopter stuff, as you saw from Seb, is going really well, and I think we want to take it much further. I mean, helicopters are very important.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Helicopters are very important.
Shocker.
Shocker, yeah. Back when you started talking about helicopters and you said that they were going to be included, you also said that you wanted to do the same with heliports and helipads that you had done with airports. Should we expect that on the 40th anniversary edition, or is it something that you are planning for the future? What's the overall plan?
It's for the future. So basically, we've built a bunch of heliports, like a dozen or so. You saw some of them in the trailer just because. And we picked some places that are really interesting heliports, like near the pyramids. One is like in New York. There's several one's in Paris. And there are cool examples for what a fully functioning big heliport actually looks like. But what we need to do, so far, and you can probably help me and your community, we are really looking for a worldwide database of heliports, and it's hard. There's helipads on ships, there's helipads on all kinds of hospitals, there's helipads all over the place, and we have not found a universal, or at least global, database. So we actually have researchers on this right now, but this is one of those things where I would say, hey, community, you guys know tons more than we do about that specific topic. If you can help us out, we will put them in, because once we have them, then we can do the ground services appropriately and all that stuff, which right now we just made the art. They're there to land, but they're not fully functioning yet. So that's something that we're planning on. I think either 23 or 24, we're going to do that. But the hope is that when we started, here's the story. When we started, there were 24,000 airports or something. I forget the exact number. Well, we're now to 42,000. Yeah. Okay, what the heck? And why? Because there's a bunch of airstrips we didn't know about. Somewhere it's basically grass strips, but they're there. So we are evolving. And I think we're probably not going to get everything, on one magic day. We have every heliport that exists in this world. But I think I want to get much closer. You saw that there's oil platforms, so we're playing with that. There's lots of ships. That's something that's complicated to get that right. It's just complicated. So but we are, as you know, we're dedicated to getting it right. So we're going to keep nibbling on this until we have the right database, enough information to actually do a much more deeper job than what we can do for the 40th.
Yeah. Are you also planning on developing a way for having landable moving platforms? Because ships would be important for developers to be able to add some of those into the sim.
It's one of those things we're talking about doing, but we haven't started yet. Right? I've seen, I think it was Aerosoft or somebody, they just put out the North Sea pack or something. Honestly, this is one I haven't bought. I will, because I want to check it out. But I want to look at exactly what they've done, right? Because ultimately you need to know where the traffic is. You would have to know, right, in order to actually even just plan out your flight. You need to know where the ships are, if they have an open spot even on their helipad. But ultimately, this is what people do. I mean, I did do a deep dive on oil rigs. Because I'm like, okay, oil rigs, how many are there? Where are these things? Because we had some, but there are different ones. They're all over the planet. I didn't know there's a bunch in front of West Africa. I actually had no idea. But so we are looking at that, and they are clearly all serviced by very few companies actually, as far as drilling transports. So that's one that's definitely on my roadmap because I want to do. In my book, I want to do all the oil rigs in the world, and I want to get them right because they don't all look the same at all, right? They are different.
Exactly.
They have different bottoms. It depends how deep they are. They're floating. Yada yada yada. So, but that's again, this is just time. We're going to do it, no question.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, wind farms as well. We have a lot of different things out on the sea.
Yep.
What about you have been doing a lot of historical airplanes. Will we ever see historical helicopters as well? Because there are some classics.
I like that. So it's not in my line of sight. I mean, so I'm working I don't know if you saw that thing that I think came out yesterday or 2 days ago with what we're doing with the Smithsonian. I don't know if you saw it. It's fun, right? It's a collaboration. Right now it's focused on the Spirit of St. Louis, but the desire is there to go further. And I was just there, right? I was in the center. I was looking at those helicopters like there's some super interesting machines. So I think this is a good idea. We should talk more. I would like to. Like, what? Why not? It's cool.
Yeah, I think it's there are a lot of different amazing machines, very weird ones out there, and it's a very noble mission, and we can do a lot like sling loading and whatnot, which I expect to see in the future as well. And you have kind of promised to look into it in the future. So, Jorg, I'm going to ask you one last question, which is not helicopter related. I would spend the whole day talking to you, but I know you're constrained in time. So I would like to ask you a final question, which is very broad. It's not specific to helicopters. 2 years have passed since the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator. How do you foresee the future of the sim? Ultimately, where would you like to take this sim into? I know you have a 10-year plan, so we have 8 more years to get the sim to where you want to take it. What's that? What's the end game?
So first off, I want to say something about this 10-year thing because it comes up a lot, and it's probably my own doing. What I meant to say, because people now ask me, hey, so 2 years up, we only have 8 years left, and then you guys are leaving. It's like, no, that's not exactly the plan. I mean, I'm sitting here this week thinking about the 40th anniversary edition, and there are moments in time when I'm like, man, what are we going to do for the 50th anniversary edition? So it's like, there's no magic end at 10 years. The statement was made that we had been gone for 13, 14 years. We're not just leaving. We're not putting out something that is in a hobby and then we're just all disappearing to doing something else, right? We are here with you, listening to you, making sure that the hobby is fully supported. That's what it is. Am I convinced we're going to make Flight Sim in 2048? Yeah, I'm quite sure, actually. So I'm very hopeful. So because what I'm seeing right now is like, look, there have been people that have been playing this or simming this for 40 years. Right? When we know some of them, you probably know some of them, I know some of them, right? And now there's kids coming in. We now, this year, right this moment, I think we have 4 times the audience that we had when we launched. Yeah. And that is interesting, because these are oftentimes younger people, newcomers. A lot of them are now getting into it. And they're going to want to play this and sim this for the next 40, 50 years, because we're just at a generational shift. What has happened, I think, is an influx of new, and I think it's a good thing. And I'm actually very grateful how the simmers have embraced that. Instead of saying, oh my God, there's all these people that don't even know how to fly, they actually are helping them. I'm really appreciative of people like yourself or some other content creators that are actually helping people understand this and bringing them along, really. So I'm not sure I'm exactly answering your question, but
I actually appreciate. Go ahead.
I think what's next in my mind. So there's what we talked internally, or I talk about as digital Earth. It's almost an endless pursuit to get to greater and greater accuracy. I mean, clearly we need to do seasons and things like that. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Then the world updates are kind of my method of just keeping it updated because new data is coming in, right? That's just the world in which we live. So I think that's going to get better. I think when I think about, like, for example, helicopters are interesting because you can land pretty much anywhere. And that puts a different pressure on what the place looks like than what we have right now. Right now, everything looks pretty good from 500 feet up, I would say. Not everywhere, some data that was pretty rough, but by and large, it looks good. Once you land, there's work to be done. So there's a bunch of work to be done on that. And then beyond that, I think it's sort of I always say the simmers. Yeah, I literally have this vision of this visual in my head, like there's a sandbox, and the simmers come with their little bucket and they have a shovel, and they're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do today in my sandbox, and they go to town, right? And then there's a bunch of new people, and they don't have any of those tools, and they're like, it's a sandbox, looks fun, I just don't know exactly what to do here, right? And those are the playgrounds that have some toys already, and I think there are some. It was very interesting to see how well people reacted to Top Gun, and across the board. It wasn't just like gamers liked it and simmers hated it. Not true at all. Actually, simmers really liked it, and there was a little bit more purpose. There was an end to something. You felt a sense of accomplishment. That's something we're looking into quite deeply, because I think that is really something that would benefit everyone. And it's still true to aviation. Still true what I call the aviation lifestyle. And I think those are pursuits that are worth taking. Not just fly a helicopter. Maybe do something with it. What are you going to do with it? Like, those are machines made for a purpose. Maybe we should have that purpose.
Exactly. I'm really glad that you touched that point in which people believe that, after 10 years, your guys are going away. I obviously didn't see it that way. I always saw this 10-year plan as a way for you to mature the product up to a point in which you can then start building on top of it, right? So everything that's basic, you're going to work on everything that is basic and then go from there. And that's the perspective I always had about the sim. It wouldn't make sense for Microsoft to invest on a product for 10 years and then just leave, right?
10 years is totally arbitrary. It's really just a promissory note of persistence. But I can tell you, technology, it's a very technologically advanced product that we're doing here, right? And technology is updating at a pace that is pretty awe-inspiring to watch. So I'm oftentimes looking at, we're now at 250 gigs download, it's like, okay, and we want to keep adding. And at some point or another, you need to shift some things around, right? You can't just keep dumping stuff into the same system. So I'm watching this, like, where is technology going? What does it afford us to do so we can get closer in the pursuit of the perfect sim, which is that's our pursuit.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Jorg, just one minor final question. I know I said that it was a fun one, but I have to ask this because I know people are going to ask. Just, you don't have to extend the answer if you don't want to. Are helicopters, with the 40th anniversary update, are helicopters coming to Xbox as well? Or is it?
There's nothing we do that doesn't come to all platforms. Literally nothing.
Okay.
We're keeping this together. Like we are very, very close. I probably need to be careful how much we know that people want more aircraft on more complex aircraft on Xbox. This is a well-known fact. I think there's some really good news coming our way very, very soon, because it's just basically Xbox is a secure environment, and you can't have basically native C++ code running. That's the thing. So we're using something that's basically called a sandbox called WASM, WebAssembly, and there's some technological things to overcome to make that work seamlessly. But once it's done, every aircraft will work. Like, that's the thing. Like, so there's no, we don't ship stuff just on one platform. That's never the plan.
That is amazing news, Jorg. Thank you very much. I know the Xbox players are going to be very excited. I think everyone that loves helicopters are going to be excited. We're going to have helicopters on all platforms, guys, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Jorg, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for spending this half hour talking to me about something that it's very dear to me, as you know, and that we hope to see a lot more in the future. Thank you very much, and
thank you.
I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the patience. Helicopters are here. Yeah. Perfect.